everybody, and welcome back to Stories with Bree. I am super excited about my guest today. It is Miss Pam Moore, and I want her to introduce herself briefly to you all before I get us started with the icebreakers. But yes, thank you for coming, and thank you for decided to do this with me. I was like, okay, I'm gonna ask her. I was a little nervous, but I was like, let me ask to see if she'll be willing. And I'm so glad that you were willing. So let us know about yourself. Tell my audience who you are and what you do. I'm so excited to hear it.
Okay, and I'm excited to be here. This is something that I've been looking forward to for a while. And when you reached out, I was very excited because we all have a story to tell.
Mhm.
So the fact that we can get together and share our stories and learn the things that we have in common and learn with and from each other is always very, very good. So my name is, and my everybody around me would just jump on me if I didn't introduce myself properly.
Okay.
My name is Dr. Pamela R. Moore, and the R is for Richardson, but Pamela Richardson Moore. And I am my job is that I serve as a assistant professor for educational media, which is school librarianships,
Mhm.
and educational technology at the University of South Alabama. I work in the College of Education and professional studies and get an opportunity to encounter a lot of students in a variety of different ways. I work with students who want to one day be a school librarian. I work with students who have an interest in educational technology and want to get a master's degree in that. And I work with students who are undergraduates who are taking one of their very first educational courses, and they are getting a deep dive into all the things that technology can do for you. So as a person, I'm probably just on both ends. I'm a book person because I love to read,
Yes.
and I am a technology person and because I couldn't imagine my life without it.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, put some respect on your name, Dr. Pam. Absolutely. We respect titles here. I've always been taught and trained, put a hook on that thing. And so my grandmother was like, if that person's name is Miss, Mr., if they're a doctor, you respect that title, especially if they earned it and you earned that doctorate degree. So
I definitely earned it. And it's amazing to me when I think back that it'll be 10 years. In December of this year, it will have been 10 years.
wow, wow,
So the time truly flies when you're having fun.
absolutely.
And the time would have flown anyway, even if I had not earned it. And the only thing that I can say on it is I respect you people who are very big on titles. I mean, I'm probably one of those people that's going to introduce myself as Pam because that's
Yeah,
Pam.
yeah.
And as I learned the day after getting the doctorate, that people that have a doctorate put their pants on one leg at a time,
Yes, they do.
just like everybody else,
Yes,
just like everybody else.
yes, they do.
But yes, it
I'm
was well earned.
I'm the same way. It is well earned, but I am also the same way. Like I have titles, but I'll be like, I'm still Bree. Like what you
Yeah.
talking about? I woke up yesterday as Bree. I woke up today as Bree, and I, with God's willingness, I'll wake up tomorrow as Bree as well. So I get it. I completely understand. But
Most
I definitely like to
definitely.
honor the contribution and the hard work that someone has put in to become who they are. And so before we get started on like deep diving into the librarian questions, because there is so much that I would like to ask you about, I want to start off with the icebreakers. I like to do these 5 icebreakers just so people can get a little comfortable, because I understand that when you're really just getting into a conversation with someone that you've never really talked to before, it's kind of hard to try to find that footing in that common ground. And so
That's
I
true.
created these because I feel like these are spaces that people um, that that are good answers for that can provide good answers. And so
True.
since you mentioned that you are an avid book lover, which is awesome because so am I, what if you can remember, what was your favorite childhood book?
This is a wild question for me because I am, and I feel like I have always been a reader.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really have any kind of memory of ever learning how to read I grew up in a family of readers, so books were always around me. So when I have to think about what was my favorite childhood book, I was asked that question once before, and
Okay.
I was at a loss. I just finally went to my mom and said, "What did I read? Tell me what was my childhood favorite book, because I don't remember." And she said, "You know what?" And I'm almost embarrassed to share this. She said,
Oh
"You know
no.
what your favorite childhood book was?" And I go, "What is she gonna tell me?" And she goes, "It was the encyclopedia. You
Oh.
read the encyclopedia." I'm like, "Okay, that makes sense of why I love Wikipedia like I do these days." But I guess that was what I always wanted to know, more information. And so I remember the kids' version of the encyclopedia,
Mhm.
having those at home. And I remember, I think my neighbors had those. And we had the real deal World Book that the
Oh
people used to
yes.
come to your house and sell them.
Yes.
And so that was what I read. And I remember going from the A all the way to the Z. So that was probably my favorite childhood book. I'm sure I did Cat in the Hat, but I just don't even remember Cat in the Hat.
That's
But I'm sure
understandable.
I did that.
That's understandable. Listen, Gen Zers are probably like, "What's an encyclopedia?" They don't know nothing about that. That's
I
so funny.
know.
I grew up in the house with encyclopedias, World Book, Britannica, all of those things. So when you said what you said, it actually doesn't sound weird to me. I actually grew up in a house where we studied the dictionary. Like my grandmother made it a habit if we wanted to learn a new word, if we needed to learn how to sound things out, she said, "Go get the dictionary." It was like, "Just tell me." No, I
Yeah,
actually
you
meant
look
to
it
read
up.
my book. She's like, "No, go get the dictionary and spell it out." And so I have a fondness, a deep fondness for words and a deep fondness for the dictionary because of
Yeah.
that type of engagement and that type of learning. So I don't feel no type of way about the encyclopedia being your favorite childhood book because I
But
love.
when you talk to people and you tell them that, they really look at you strange. They really, really, either they go, "Okay," or they go, "That explains a lot. Let me just wait."
That's the one. That's the one right there. That is, when I told people that I love the dictionary, they said, "Oh yeah, that explains a whole lot." It's like, what you trying to say? I don't feel shame about it. That's okay. My next question is, do you have a library card? Well, I know you do as a librarian. I guess my question should be, how many library cards do you have?
And actually, I just have our local library. I have a library card there. I have a friend of mine who has told me that, you can get one from Brooklyn, and you can get one from LA. And I never really thought about it, but I do have a very special relationship with my local branch. I
Okay.
go in now, and I don't even have to tell them anything. If it's a new person, I'll go, "Yeah, here, Pam Moore, picking up my books." Otherwise, if it's my normal librarians, I don't even have to say anything. They just start walking to the shelf and they pull my books out for me. I rarely peruse the shelf. I'll make myself peruse the shelf because I'll figure got to be a book out there that I don't know about and I want to know about. But generally, I find books that interest me, and I will go online and put them in on hold at my library.
Absolutely.
And it's funny, when we moved to the community in which we live, that was one of my biggest concerns, was that it did not have a branch. I would have to travel miles to get to a library. And no, that's not part of my world. There has to be a library nearby. And maybe about a year later, it was a building that was originally constructed to be a Eckerd drugstore. And
Interesting.
for some reason, it did not take as a drugstore.
Hmm.
So the community purchased the building and turned it into a library. So
That's
we have a beautiful facility that looks like a drugstore. It's got the drive-through windows and all of that. And that's my library. So only one card, and pretty much I'm tied to my local Sims library branch. But over the past week, because I was looking for a specific book and I was in another area, I've gone to 3 different branches within the past week, not counting the academic library on campus. So I'm a library person. You're making me
Hey,
want to.
so am I.
I'm a
Look,
library person.
ain't no shame over here. Libraries are my safe space. I am very much so a proud advocate of libraries, and I'm very much so honest and open about that. The libraries is something about being inside of a library. It
Yes.
just brings comfort and peace to me, and it's a safe space for me. And it's interesting that you all as a community restructure the building. I think that a lot of libraries are like that now, that they have, like, even little small libraries, they once were something else. And so even within that, they hold a history. And I think that that's
Mhm.
what's cool. And I bet through the pandemic, low key, that drive-through could have been very beneficial to the
Oh yeah.
library. So because now you can just pull your car up and we can just put your books out the car window, out the window, like it's a
Yeah.
drive-through. So that's beneficial. You never know when things like that come in handy. Um,
And I was so used to going there that
mhm,
I can still remember when they opened back up, because they did curbside, and
mhm.
when they actually opened back up and you could go inside with the pandemic. And I just walked in and just took a deep breath, because like you said, it's a place of comfort. And I didn't realize up until that point how much I'd missed it,
Mhm.
because it again, I generally go in, they got my books behind the shelf, I go grab, they got my books and I'm gone. But just to be able to go in and look around and go, I'm here, we're home, it's back.
It's back. Yeah, I was in the library yesterday and I was like, ooh, it feel good to be in here. It feel good to, walk around and browse the shelves. And I was in there and I actually decided to just use the computer that's inside the library instead
Mhm.
of bringing my laptop. And I was just like, oh, I don't remember this timing, having to remember to extend your time or you lose
Yep.
everything. I was just like, oh, this is why I feel like libraries are so important.
Yes.
And we'll get more into that aspect as we go on. But I
Okay.
wanted to ask you, digital or pen and paper?
Both. I mean, I told you, I am not a Gemini. However, there is no way possible that I could select one or the other.
Mm,
I am 100% both. I mean, I got a tremendous amount of books
mhm.
on here, and I have a tremendous amount. My husband gets on me because my nightstand is higher and higher and higher. And the room that I'm in now is like my home office slash study. And of course, when we built our house, I'm like, it's got to have a bookshelf, built-in
Absolutely.
bookshelf. So it's got bookshelf. I got books all on the shelf, books on my nightstand. So I am just a reader. I read whatever I can get my hands on. So it doesn't matter to me, print or digital. I don't care. I'm both.
Yeah, me too. Like I'm more digital than I am print, but I'm definitely both. And like I tell people all the time, anywhere I go, it's a book somewhere on
Oh
me.
yeah.
It's a book somewhere, whether it's on my phone, whether it's
Oh
physically
yeah.
in hand, it's a book somewhere. So just believe, just because you
Always.
don't see it, don't mean it's not there. Um,
Always.
always there. And I
Always.
like you, and that's what we have in common. Like I've always been a very avid reader. I've always hours upon hours with books.
Yes.
I lose time reading a book.
Yes.
And so I just think that that's the best thing ever. I wouldn't know. And even thinking about what you said, I don't even remember when I started reading. I don't remember that either. I just remember that there's always been literature, there's always
Mhm.
been writing, there's always been something around me centered on literacy, centered
Yeah.
on reading stories and telling stories, always. And so I don't
Yes.
remember that either. That's an interesting discovery. When you even said that, I was like, like, oh, that me too. Like
Yeah.
I never thought about that, but that's actually really true. And so my last icebreaker question is just, who's your favorite author or writer, if you have one? Who do you lean more to?
Okay. I am truly at this point. This is what getting the doctorate degree did for me. I
Mhm.
am so much of a nonfiction reader. I try to read fiction. I mean, I try to read fiction, and I just have such a hard time because I'm like, cut to the chase. I already know. Go and tell me, how did they get together at the end? What happened at the end? I don't have time to put. I flip through the pages. Go ahead and get to the end. But if I were asked, as you asked me, who is my favorite author? I'd say my favorite author. Answer to that question is J. California Cooper, because one of my books that I love the most is called The Wake of the Wind.
Okay.
And it's a book about it's a history, and I'm a history person. My major in college was history and Spanish. And so it's a historical book that blends in the magical realism that J. California Cooper does. I don't know if you're familiar with her or were familiar with her, but these people from slavery from like Georgia to Texas,
Wow.
walk,
Wow.
walk.
That's a long walk. That's a journey.
What they did, that's how they did it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful story. There's probably another one that's a favorite, sort of in that same realm, called Makeda. And those are fiction books that I like. And it's by Randall Robinson. Yeah, Randall Robinson. And it's a magical realism book about a lady who, it's not really necessarily time travel, but it also talks about how there are places that are around that have always been around. And this person in the book sort of is like, she comes back as different people, but all the experiences she has, and she's blind and she's illiterate, but she can tell you about the star configuration that can only be seen in Timbuktu and Mali.
Okay, sounds kind of sounds like Kindred. I believe it's Kindred by Octavia Butler. That kind of sounds like that, where they have
yes, kind of that same realm. It's a newer book, I think, than that. And I hate to say it, I haven't done my Octavia Butler like I should,
That's okay.
but yes, it's sort of in that realm. So
Okay.
yeah, those are favorites.
Okay, since you like historical fiction, I would say these are my three that came up as you were talking to me about what you were saying you had read. And the three that came up was Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. Is a good one that you might want to look into. One that I just got through reading very, very recently, which is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by
I saw that one.
Honoré.
I follow her on Twitter.
Oh my goodness. Phenomenal book. Phenomenal.
Okay.
So I definitely recommend that you read that one. It blends in indigenous people, African American culture. It's just a blend of well-blended, well-rounded book, and even some of Southern culture. It blends all of those pieces together, and it tells this story. And it literally takes historical moments throughout history, and then creates historical fiction. And it was just like, it wasn't what I expected at all. I'm thinking I'm gonna pick up a book that's going to talk about W.E.B. Du Bois, talk about no, she took me on a ride. And so I definitely recommend that one. And I also recommend The Water Dancer, and it's by Ta-Nehisi Coates. It wasn't what I expected either, but it was a really good book. So those are three fiction books. If you ever decide to go back over into the fiction space,
I will. I actually got an email yesterday. I don't know how I missed this. I mean, last week was a blur, but I got an Audible credit. So I was texting a friend yesterday to say, hey, my Audible credit just dropped. What do I need to get? And she gave me two crazy, from this continuum of, no, I don't want to read that, to, no, I don't want to read that. So I needed something in the midst of both of those.
But those
so I'm going to take your advice, and especially since I think, well, Coates is not on Twitter anymore from what I can remember, but the WB Du Bois, I follow her on Twitter, and Colson Whitehead. I didn't watch Underground Railroad only because I heard that it was traumatic, and I can't take that. There's certain times that I can take that.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to really watch the show, but
I heard it's no joke.
The book is if it's anything like the book, then yeah, it is no joke. And so I would definitely recommend reading the book. He has another book that's just recently came out, and it's called The Nickel Boys. And that is the one that's talking about that the
Florida
jail. Yeah, that with that prison, and he did a really good job of making it not seem, it wasn't, I won't say it won't seem as bad, because it was still a hard story, but he did a really good job of marrying historical facts and fiction together in a way that it's easier to I guess it's easier to take down and to take in. It's not something that's gut punching. Now I will say, Honoré Fanoni Jeffers, I said Jones earlier, forgive me if she ever watches this, but that one might be a little bit more harder to take in, but it's worth it. I'm telling you, it's worth it. I highly recommend.
I can take it if it's worth it. I just can't take gratuitous violence, because too much other crazy things go on in the world that I can't fill my mind with more than what I'm going to fill my mind with anyway. Absolutely. So for that reason, I go no. And actually, the one that I've been trying to pick up and read, I got it here, and I picked it up today and ended up doing something else called Black Joy.
I think I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
That's where I need to go right about now. I need to go on Black Joy. I need Black joy. So give me something. I like Jasmine Guillory,
Okay, I've heard.
who
Yes,
is
I've heard.
romance novelist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like
I haven't
her.
read her books
I
yet.
like
I've been
happy
seeing
ending.
them. I've been seeing
Mhm.
them all across social media, but I haven't read them yet. She's on my TBR list, as they
Yes.
say. So my to be read. So you talked about you being a school librarian. You talked about you being the head of the school library. I forgot the title just that fast, but you're the
Program. I'm a program coordinator for a school librarianship
yes,
program. Yes.
you're the program coordinator, forgive me, of a school librarianship program. So, but how long have you been an actual librarian? How many years have you been working in the field of librarianship?
I have, if I were just counting pure time, I first became a school librarian in 1999. So that's what, 23 years?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Now, during that 23 years, that was a pretty large gap in
Mhm.
which I moved more to the technology realm.
Okay.
So I was a school librarian. And then after becoming a school librarian for a few years, I transitioned and became an instructional technology coach to educators at a very large school district. So I would go into schools to help them learn more about different technology tools and all of that, whether it was student and really didn't work much with students, but teachers, administrators, and others at the school. But I'll tell you this much.
Mhm.
Where was the first place I went to when I got to a school? If I went to a school to visit, can you guess where was the first site after signing in at the office to say, hey, I'm here? Where do you think I went first?
The library.
You know,
The library.
I did.
Absolutely.
No idea. I mean, it's a place. It's my place. It's my happy place. And so I would always go there, and don't let them have a book fair.
Oh,
I would have to just drag myself out of a book fair.
yeah, I don't care where I am. Any place that I move to, I'm finding out where the library is, where it's
Yeah.
located, how far it is in close proximity to my house. I'm going in, I'm looking around. I may not get my library card on that first visit, but I'm definitely checking out the space and scoping it out to see what they have available. And then after I scope it out and check it out, then I'm gonna probably come back and get my library card so I
Oh,
can
of
sign up
course.
and have access to like the electronic resources.
Yes, most definitely.
Because
But
now,
no, so after serving for quite a few years in technology, I got my doctorate degree in instructional technology. And so still kind of kept a foot in keeping up with what was going on in library world, but not in it as much as the technology world. And so when an opportunity became available for the position that I have now, I was just excited because I didn't even think about it in terms of how do people learn to become librarians? So I know I went and got a master's degree. So I'm sure that's how people are still doing it these days.
right.
And so I went to my university, the university that I work, to talk with them about another project. And they said, you're certified as a librarian, you have educational technology background, and you have school leadership background. Like, yeah, that's me. Doesn't aren't there bunches of us just walking around every day? And they're like, no, we'd like to talk to you. And
Right.
next thing I know, we had a conversation and went through the interview process, and I was hired. And it's a different world going from K-12 school settings, kindergarten to 12th grade, to going to higher ed.
Mhm.
It's a whole new world. I was talking to someone last night or night before about it, and I said, I just wish someone had given me a book to explain all the acronyms, because I was initially just sitting in a meeting and they were talking about CAPE and CHIP and this and that. And I'm like, okay,
Listen,
okay.
librarians love their acronyms. I am a librarian. I still be like, okay, what does that mean? Like, because, and it's so fluid because they talk about it as if everybody knows. And I'd be like, what does stand for? And sometimes I ask, sometimes I kind of Google it. Sometimes I'm just like, I might be like, I'm gonna write this down and try to figure this out later. Or I
That's what I do.
right there in the what does stand for? I mean, not
That's what I do.
pardon my ignorance, but what does that stand for? What are we talking about? And then they kind of like chuckle and then they remember to say it and then they'll go back to using the acronym. And it's just like a way of life. I said, we are alphabet city up in here.
Yes,
Everybody don't know what
most definitely. But doing what I do has enabled me to build pretty strong relationships, which I kind of already had with our local school librarians, but also offering opportunities for collaboration with the public library as well as our academic library.
Mhm.
So I'd say I have a pretty good working relationship with all three of those, and have helped build some bridges to show them or to work with them in ways in which school libraries can collaborate with public libraries, and that school libraries can collaborate with academic libraries. I actually had a meeting today with two of our academic librarians for on campus,
Mhm.
and they were talking about a project that they're working on that they needed, or they wanted to work with me with my students who want to be school librarians. And then I brought up another project that was school library related. And in my professional life, I serve as the president-elect of the Alabama School Librarians Association.
Okay.
So that means that this year I am the chair for our summer conference.
Okay.
So we're hosting that here in Mobile, and working with them, wanting to partner with the public library as well as the academic library as far as spaces for training, for meetings, and then any other collaborative presentations and all of that, and just doing that with them. So that's it. Yeah, I have a lot going on.
Yeah, I understand. And I completely get that because I have a little bit I just when I go back and look at my resume, I realize that I have like experience in all of these different spaces that you were saying. And as it comes up in different interviews and stuff when I'm going out for positions, I talk about how, I've worked in academia. I'm currently working in a government library. I've worked in a library that was literally in hybrid. It was a school library, it was a public library, and it was an academic library. We serviced
Wow.
three different groups of people, and you had to be able to navigate the needs for all of these different people.
All of them.
And it's
Yeah.
just like, this is a lot, but I felt like it helped me and it benefited me in such a way that now, as I continue to go forth, as I continue to navigate and even have these conversations in these and with my network, I can pull from these different areas. Or when I'm in conversation, it's like, oh yeah, I get that, I understand it, I understand the language. Because when you think about it, like, yes, although the we are librarians, everybody has a different language. And so
Yes.
to understand that and to navigate that language, I think is a skill within itself to be able to marry those networks together and be like, okay, I'm the liaison for this. I can teach you how to do this. I can help you do this. I can show you how a school librarian would do that and maybe switch that around so it could be more beneficial and for kids and more entertaining. And then on an academic scale, I can maybe beef up the language a little bit so that it can feel like it's more of a give you more of a homey professional type of feel or skill feel and everything. And then in the public library, it's like we're cool, we're chill, we're relaxed here, like we're just wanting people to come in to utilize our resources. And so we're kind of in the middle because we service everybody. And so understanding how to navigate those spaces, I think, is very important. Um,
Well, let me say this though. It's always also about your network.
mhm,
And as a school librarian, coming from that perspective, and which translates into a lot of what I do now, when you are a school librarian, there's rarely any other person on your school site that knows what you know and what you do.
yeah,
You have a special set of skills that it is, you can collaborate with others, but they don't quite know, because that's not their job, what you do and how you do it. I remember when I was a school librarian, people would come into the library and say, well, they get anybody to do this. And I was like, no, they cannot. I do have a master's degree in school librarianship and educational media. No, anybody just walking in off the street
mhm,
can't do this, because they have the misconception that what you're doing is checking out books. And yes, that doesn't take a high skill set to check in or out
right,
books.
yeah, school
Scanning books is not
library,
rocket science. We scan groceries at the grocery store, so it's truly not rocket science.
right,
But in order to build a collection, that's rocket science. In
it,
order to meet the needs of who you are working with and for, that's rocket science. In order to collaborate and be able to develop the content that they need, that's rocket science. So yes, you do need training to do that. And what I do now, like I told someone just last week, I said I used to joke that school librarianship was isolated. But what I do now in my state, there are 6 programs
Mhm.
throughout the state in which you can get a master's degree in school librarianship.
Mhm.
6 programs. And all the programs are like this small.
Mhm.
So technically, there are 6 folks in the state of Alabama
Yeah.
that do what I do. Now, if you want to talk isolating, I can give you isolating.
Right.
6 people.
That's
So
right.
I have to keep those 6, and I've met all of them
Hmm.
because that's just who I am. I've met all of them, but I have to keep good relationships, working relationships with them because if I want to talk about how we're doing program evaluation and reaccreditation, to
Yeah.
go talk to a colleague who is in social studies education, they don't know what librarians do.
Right.
So I have to have that connection with people at other universities to say, hey, how's that going for you? Did you figure out how to do this? What did they say about that? And they go, oh, okay, we have a connection. We're working together to do some things because it's an isolating job for them as well.
Yeah, it is. I could believe that. Only 6 people. That's like when you think about it, you would assume just looking at the state of Alabama, Alabama is really not a small state. Even like people
So
might think it is, but it really isn't a small state. And to have 6 people to try to navigate through all of these different things and all of these different that's very that's
6 programs, and one I think is no longer going to be a program. So
um
then we'll be down to 5 of us.
listen, that's a lot to put on 5 people to do. And that's something I feel like that's just a common problem in libraries in general. And one thing that I do know about school librarianship that makes it once again not very easy to do, that you also in many ways have to be a teacher. So you have
You
to
do have to be a teacher, not
you
even
have
in
to
many
be
ways. You must be a teacher
you're a teacher,
in order to do
lesson
it. Yes.
plans and stuff, lesson plans and stuff like that.
Yes.
And that's where they knocked me out because I was like, listen, nope, I'm okay. I don't want to be.
But my school library interns will do some of their internship hours that is required by the state of Alabama for their certificate. Will do some of their internship at the public library. And when the public library is planning summer programming, who
Mhm.
do they want to help them in planning summer
Right.
programming? Teachers, school librarians, because they know how to do that part that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
They doing planning a lesson is no biggie to them. They can do that because that's what they do.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, going back to that, that's exactly what they do. But then going back to what you were saying, how it's literally about to be just 5 of you all. I was saying that I feel like that is just a library wide program where it's a little bit of us that has to service a lot of people and having to understand like to navigate through these different levels of bureaucracy that can often happen as far as
Mhm,
funding is concerned, as far as
mhm.
grants and things are concerned. And I just, for me, I personally, what really, I know that you love libraries, I know that you love books, but you also said you have this information technology side. I've been grappling with trying to navigate into more of the information technology field. And one of my deepest regrets had been is just that I feel like I wish I would have leaned more into the information science side of my library degree. But to be
Mhm.
honest, it's like if I would have done that, would I literally wanted to even work in libraries or come back to libraries? So what was it about the library and about actually being around librarians and being a mentor and being someone who navigated and cultivated those skills in them? What made you say, okay, yes, this was good for the time being, but I think what gravitated you back into this space of wanting to cultivate and help I guess the next generation of
Oh,
librarians?
most definitely the next generation.
What
When you started asking your question, I immediately thought my pat answer is just my answer that I'd answer like that is short attention span, because I did what I did for the amount of time that I did it, but eventually I'm a person that it's got to feed you. And
Mhm.
I don't mean feed you as in it's got to feed you economically, because it does have to do that, but it's also got to feed your spirit and your soul and your brain.
I agree.
And when you get to that point where you go, I've made these goals and I've achieved these goals in this particular field. What else can I do?
Mhm.
And something's got to still be driving you.
Mhm.
I hate it when you look up and go, what year is it again?
Oh, yeah.
And so that has been one of the moving factors for me in moving from doing one thing to the next thing to the next thing, as well as opportunity and as well as preparation. Because if you want to do something else, you got to go prepare for it. So
Mhm.
that when those opportunities come, what do they say? Luck plus preparation, preparation plus perspiration, something equals luck. Yes, opportunities will find you, but you've got to be prepared, whether it's skills that you already know or a willingness to learn new things. So that was probably one of the things that moved me when I was a librarian. Actually, the thing that moved me more to the technologies part of things was the fact that I like teaching others. And I like helping other teachers learn more about how to incorporate technology and what they were doing. So when I was a librarian, I was doing workshop presentations to show teachers and others, here are new tools or here are new methods for doing the things that you're doing. So that was probably the thing that pulled me to the technology side, was getting an opportunity to serve as a person who could enlighten others. And so as I do what I do now, that's probably one of the most important driving forces for me in doing it, is I get an opportunity to impact the future,
Yeah.
whether it's students who want to be librarians, whether it's students who want to incorporate ed tech into something that they're doing, or whether it's undergrads that don't quite know what they want to do,
Yeah.
but who have that idea that I need to learn more. And why not make this look like a viable thing that they can do? One thing that sort of bothers me about certain occupations is the people that are in those occupations make the job seem like the very worst part of the job. And no job is all wonderful, but no job is all bad either. And if it's all one or the other, you need to look at still, what are you doing in that situation? Because wonderful wears off as well as drudgery wears off.
Yes, it does.
And so that's something that I like to look at, of what can I do next? How can I do things next? And what will drive me to move forward in that way?
Yeah, I agree. And to be honest, whether everybody wants to acknowledge it or not, technology is our future. And we're moving more and more every day to that aspect of making sure that people are in understanding and navigating through. And not, to be honest, even though I didn't lean more into those classes, I've always had a lean into technology. It's just
Yeah,
always just been a natural thing that happens for me. Like, I'm teaching and training people how to use their everyday things like their smartphone, teaching
right,
older generations how to navigate the computer, how to navigate social media. It's because this is our future. This is where we are. Like, yes, we'll still have physical spaces, but even some library spaces have taken out the books and literally created those spaces into more digital maker spaces and things of that nature to
right.
prepare for the future. And my one of my passions is, and part of the reason why I'm also a librarian, is because of, I believe in creating digital access for all and making
Oh,
sure
most
that all
definitely.
people are connected to the to connected to connect to connected to technology, excuse me,
Hmm.
and to understand that there is still like 13% of the population that still don't have adequate access. And having this COVID-19 thing really stressed
Open,
how
yes,
many people really don't have this access, specifically school systems who don't have the access that they need to be able to adequately give to their students and deal with their students and help their students while they're at home during pandemics. Like, understanding how important technology is. And I could see why they were like, well, no, nobody has the skill set that you have. We want you, we need you. And my next question for you is just like, even with that, the technology and the information and being a librarian, did you always want to be a librarian, or is this something that you kind of like fell into as time went on?
well, it's sort of interesting. I mean, I tell anybody, once a librarian, always a librarian.
I
So I
agree.
always considered myself that, even when I wasn't a practicing librarian. I when I when I went to college, and like I said, I got a degree in history and Spanish,
Right.
I knew that I was going to have to do something else, that was just a stepping stone. So it
Mhm.
was a matter of, in this whole wide world with all the different choices of what you can do, which one do you want to select? And I selected library because I'm a reader. And by then, I also was starting to get a greater interest because remember my age now. If I told you I've been a librarian since had a master's in librarianship since 1999, this means that I was at the forefront of a lot of the educational technology things that were happening.
Yeah.
So the interest was always there. That I was intrigued. I can remember the very first time I saw PowerPoint. Yeah, again,
Wow.
I'm aging myself. And I remember just seeing, okay, so there are these squares and the rectangles, and they're on the screen, and you can put content on them, and it doesn't have to be in a certain spot. You can move it around. It didn't click for me for a few weeks, maybe, that actually you were building a show, and there was a button called Start Slideshow, and it was going to take all that stuff on those squares and fill up the entire screen with it. I was like, really? It can do that?
Mhm.
So I can remember learning all of those things. And when I was working on a degree I got a degree in history and Spanish, but no teacher certification. So then I taught a year of Spanish on an emergency certification, and then went back to school and got the true certification in both of those fields. The crazier part of it is never taught Spanish again, and my language skills now have gone down. I
Okay.
can probably understand a teeny tiny bit of it. And the other part is never, ever taught history. The only time I taught history was student teaching. But
Wow.
I felt like those were foundational skills for me, and it influenced my approach to how I do things. Because if you're learning another language, a lot of that is about taking a
Yeah.
risk to be uncomfortable. So that grows you as a learner. And if you're learning about history and you have an interest in that, that means that you recognize how the past influences the present and the future.
Yeah.
And it helps you understand how important context is and why things happen. So from there, as I thought about, okay, so I've gotten this degree now. And I think I was teaching when I first started grad school to become a librarian, I was teaching computer science at a middle school,
Wow.
building my own curriculum because this was early. This was in late 90s,
Mhm.
and there really weren't technology curriculums there. So I was deciding this is what I want the students to learn. Okay, we'll do this. And we did all of those things as I was working on the library degree. And when I got my library degree, there were three required courses that teachers in Alabama could take for free
Mhm.
that would help them increase their technology fluency and
Okay.
have them more comfortable with technology. So I got a chance in my library degree to get a deeper dive into technology because those three courses were incorporated into the library curriculum. So I did that as well as the library
Mhm.
part of it. The other thing that I really appreciated and helped me as a librarian, and so helped me to this day with what I do, is that my program was at Alabama State University. It's in Montgomery, Alabama. It was a Master's of Ed in Library, not an MLS, Master's of Education. I'm a teacher. But we were in the state capitol. So that means that the State Department of Education was located there. So if my professor wanted us to learn about librarianship and what were the expectations of a librarian at a school in the K-12 school, he
Yeah.
brought over the supervisor for the State Department for librarianship. I remember meeting her and going, "Hey, I'm from Mobile." And she's like, "You're from Mobile? You are up here?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is a school that my parents met, my dad graduated from, my grandparents graduated from, didn't know then my son would one day graduate from. So
Wow.
yes, this is my school. This is why I'm here, and I want to learn." Meeting other people within the library world during that time was very beneficial to me. Went after when I finished, got a job as a librarian, did that, and then moved over to technology. And I don't know if I ever thought I would one day be an educator of school librarians. I mean, it sounds bad when I say it like that, but you just never know what the Lord will open up for you.
Exactly.
And the more interesting part of that, like I told you, I stay busy. I was just last year elected as the chair elect of the Educators of School Librarians section for the American Association of School Librarians.
Wow, congratulations on that.
So yeah, I got a lot of irons in the fire. So I've got an opportunity to see how the American Association of School Librarians work, some of the inner workings there, as well as American Library Association, and go to conferences and participate with that. I even served on the conference planning committee for our last conference back last year in October in Salt Lake City. And so I got a chance to see how conferences are built.
Mhm.
How do you secure the speakers? How do you pick the sessions? All of that, which was preparing me for what I've got to do now with the local conference that we're going to have.
Yes,
So,
I mean, hey, listen, I don't mind somebody bragging about all the things and all the accolades that they got going on and things that they do. Because as a person who is keeps busy and is an active member of Team Too Much, I am okay with you having all of the things going on. And I feel like my one of my goals, and I always stress to people, I want to leave this life empty. And so if I have to do everything that I can and have whatever capacity that I can do it, I'm gonna leave this place, making sure that I pour out and I give everything that I have in me that needs to be out in the world. And I feel like you're doing that. You're actively doing that with all of your hand in all of these, you just say irons in the fire with your
oh
all
yeah.
your irons in the fire. I feel like that's what you're doing. You're
And I do that as well as I'm a wife, I'm a
look,
mom,
we're
I'm
many.
a daughter, I'm a niece. All of these relationships in my life that are very important. I'm active in my church.
Mhm.
I'm active in my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, in case you can't tell what I was pink and green around me. Active member in the Links organization. So I mean, I'm active. And the good thing that I tell people about that is the fact that I do have all those irons in the fire, and I give a lot to all of the different groups and Alabama State Alumni Association. Can't forget them. I'm active in them too. But I can't I can't let any particular group or task weigh on me too much because I always got something else to do. The
Right.
people that I found that are kind of singular focus is
Mhm.
like everything is the be all and end all on one particular task. No, actually, I'm like, okay, I'm doing this, but then I got to do that, but I got to do that, I got to do that. So I have different things going on.
Yeah, and listen. I agree with that. I don't know if I ever been able to be singularly focused. I feel like I always gotta have more than one thing going because I get bored easily, and so
Thank you. That's me.
I get bored easily. And so if I got something else going on, then he's gonna be like, all right, I'm sitting here idle. I need to be doing something. I need to be doing something. And so I do want to.
But wait a minute, let me say this
Oh,
though
go ahead.
too. For your question for just a second.
Uh-huh,
But
go ahead.
as I'm aging,
Hmm.
I'm also looking at balance and rest.
How does that?
And
How does
what
that?
I've been trying to give myself, especially since over the past year or so,
Mhm.
is to not book every moment, every hour, every second, because I could, and I don't book them all. I now dedicate time that my day starts later because
Okay.
of the schedule that I have. And now I get up in the morning, I take my time with breakfast. I go work out. If I want to work out, I sit and I read a book and just kind of still myself and do all of that before I get into the whirlwind of the things that I have to do or I choose to do or that have chosen me to be done. So I will stress that I'm not running on 99, 100% of the time. My husband thinks I am, but I promise you, he got a chance today because he stayed home from work today. So
Mhm.
he got a chance to see that, oh, you don't hop up running. No, I get up and I sit around for a bit and read for a bit and watch TV for a bit and kind of listen to my podcast and do all of that. Then I move and transition into moving. So I ain't in a rush at all.
How important is that? I'm actually glad you said that because I feel like that is something that's essential, especially when you're in a role that's so forefront facing and forward facing and people facing. How important is I know you're saying that now as you're getting older that balance is more important to you, but how important is that just if you were talking to maybe an early career librarian or even like myself, because I'm still considered a baby in the field. I've
Yeah.
only been a degree librarian now for about 5.5 years. It'll be 6 years in May, but I've always been more of a busybody. And even before I became a librarian, I've always been actively doing things, serving in my local church and all of those things. But if you were talking to early career librarians, what would you say to them? How would you say how to create balance, how to not take everything so personal? What would your piece of advice be to them if you were even looking back at your younger self? What would you say? Like, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to focus on, or incorporate into your space and into your life, so that you can have a well balanced life.
I don't know. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I would say is you decide, and only you decide what's important to you, and that's what you're going to focus on. I also have, over the past couple of years, and I think this was pre-pandemic that I came up with this, that I let my yes be yes. So if I tell you yes, like I told you yes, I'm
Mhm.
going to do it. But I also have to let my no's mean no. And I'm a person that sometimes I go, no, but I really mean, but I might, could, maybe so. And no, if I tell you no, that's it, it's over. I got to keep it moving. If I tell you yes, no, that I'm going to do it. And make that, you determine, only you can determine what are your yeses and what are your nos. People will truly try to make those decisions for you. And there's some you don't have a choice about, but only you can decide what are those areas that will be the most meaningful to you. Always keep a space open though, and keep a space open for happenstance and what happens and things that you don't know to say yes or no to. You got to keep a space open for that. Don't have yourself so tied up that there's no flexibility in what you do. I pride myself on the flexibility, and I'm like, whatever, okay.
That's good. That's good. I agree with that. I feel like there is I'm trying. I'm not gonna say that I'm perfect at it, but I'm
Oh
still
no, me
learning how
neither.
to create that flexibility, how to have that a little bit of gray, I guess, as we could say, in that gray area where I kind of is like, maybe this task is not as important to try to like heap on my head today. Maybe I should, talk a little bit better to myself and not feel bad about resting.
Yes,
You
that's
know?
it.
So yeah,
That's it.
I'm learning that not to feel bad about resting or taking a breath or taking a breather.
That's it.
Every minute doesn't have to.
That is it 100%.
Yes, I'm learning that. So
Cut
I
yourself some slack.
listen, and I am me. I'm the person that don't cut myself a lot of slack. Like, I give grace to other people, but learning how to give grace to myself is something that I'm actively like creating and learning how to do. So I appreciate that advice. I
And
appreciate that.
And those are skills that I think any early career person needs to learn. I don't care what field you're in. One thing that I could say to apply that back to librarianship
Mhm.
is, in some instances, and this may not be where you are, but where I am, it's an aging population as well. So often there are people that are pretty firm or stuck in, this is the way we do it, this is the way we've always done it, and not necessarily leaving room for innovating thinking or even a different way of thinking about things.
Yeah.
So that can be a challenge when you're a new person and you're learning and you're willing to try new things, that getting that support, that encouragement, that feedback on why it could work, not just why it won't ever work.
Mhm.
And being that person to other people to say, yeah, let's look at this. Let's look at it from a different perspective. And I think that helped me at times. I hope it helped me because coming to K-12, I mean, coming into higher ed, I was 49-year-old Pam becoming what I do now versus if I had been 29-year-old Pam or
Mhm.
39 even year old Pam doing what I do now, I would have had a different perspective on things. So it was quite different for me to do what I do now at this age because it just changes how you look at stuff.
I agree. And so my last question is it's still deep diving into librarianship.
Yes, please.
And I want to say, and I don't even want to preface it with anything, but I want to hear your thoughts on what do you believe is like one thing that the profession can do in terms of creating a DEI work environment, so diverse, equitable, and inclusive in work environment. What is one thing you believe could happen in order for the library profession to create that?
I think that one thing that it can do for the profession to do that is to continue to create pipelines so that it becomes a viable career for a cross section of people, and not just for certain people, that this is a viable career. I think it needs to be, it's a viable career for all. If you have an interest, as I used to say at one of the programs that I was doing, yes, it's good to love books, and yes, it's good to love technology, but in order to be an effective librarian, you got to love people, because that's what you deal with more than the books, more than the technology. It's doing all of that for people. And what do people look like? We're diverse. We have different backgrounds. We have different interests. We have different skill set. So when you look at it that way and saying, what can I do to serve people? Then that means that you have to have a diverse workforce. That means that you have to have a diverse way of thinking about things and a diverse approach to things. I've had an opportunity to work with, among another task that I've had. I am on the DEI Council for our College of Education and Professional Studies. I and another professor serve as co-chair for that.
Mhm.
So it's given me an opportunity to say, what are we talking about when we say diversity, and how are we making things equitable for all and providing that equity, and how are we making people feel welcome and included?
Yeah,
Because I've sat at a lot of tables where they said, we gave you a chair, but did I feel included? Did I feel my voice was heard?
yes,
Did I feel that my opinion mattered? Did I even feel that what I brought had value to others at the table?
absolutely.
And we need to work on instilling that, and that takes the pipeline of new people coming into the field. Of course, has got to be diverse, but also that acceptance and helping them move through that pipeline
Yeah.
for whatever their career aspirations needs to be in place. This cannot be the field of a certain chosen few.
Yes, I agree. And I have always, and for me personally, that's it. That's the thing right there. That's the kicker. I've always wanted to be a person that created and lived in and worked in and thrived in a multicultural, multi-generational space, because that's what we are. We're
Yes.
multicultural, we're multi-generational. And part of the reason why I came into the library world is because I believe that that's what the library world was. It wasn't until I got into the field where I start bumping up against these things where it's like, oh, wait a minute. Like, and so I wrote a blog post about it where I said the library does a really good job of trying to create a diverse, equitable, inclusive space for their patrons, but they're not doing it as much for the people who actually work inside of the profession. And so learning how to do that, how to navigate as an early career librarian, I have bumped into a whole lot of that. Like you said, going into a space where you're saying there's a seat here for me. You're gun ho about creating this seat, but then when I come to sit in the chair, how do I live? How do you make me feel when I come to sit at the table? And because I think the saying goes, it's not what you do to people, is how you make them feel.
Mhm.
And I have always recognized that. I understand that, and I agree 100% in just like creating a space where you not only just make it seem like these are the people that are important, that are at the forefront. Like even doing my own research and going to library school, honestly, I didn't learn about Black librarians, which is why I put emphasis on me being a Black librarian often. I didn't learn about Black librarianship and really their contribution to the field of librarianship. I did that research on my own. I had to learn that information on my own.
Well, when I was a school librarian, there were three ladies
Mhm.
who took me under their wing. And these three ladies, two of the three ladies, sorry, four ladies, can't leave her out because she was my supervisor. Four of these three ladies were classmates of my dad, which
Mhm.
means they finished high school in the late 50s.
Mhm.
So they were Black librarians who had worked in the field
Yeah.
for many, many years, and were very welcoming and exciting to me to say, we need you here.
Yeah.
You have to be a part of this. They were very appreciative of the tech skills that I brought, and they taught me so much.
Yeah.
They taught me oh so much, and I'm just so excited whenever I see them. So we've got to continue that mentorship,
Yeah.
and we've got to not be satisfied until we bring others along with us.
I agree.
The door doesn't close with me. I want to see, I will be so excited. I'm so excited at commencement when I see my students graduate. I'm so excited when they get jobs. And I'll be even more excited when they decide that, you know what? I need to go ahead and get my ed specialist degree. You know what? I need to go ahead and get my doctorate degree. You know what? One day I will be a professor and teaching other school librarians.
Yeah.
That's what that brings me joy.
And I think that that's important because, and I'm gonna get ready to let you go, but I think that's so important to see people like us. And to be honest, I grew up around Black librarians.
Oh
I
yeah, I
didn't
did too.
realize that Black librarians weren't like, they were a very small percentage in the profession until I got in and started seeing the statistics and stuff. But most of when I was in my childhood, most of the librarians I saw were African American. Like I didn't know that they weren't that prominent in the field, and that's part of that is because I grew up in a what I would consider a Black city. Now it wasn't
Mhm.
always a Black city, but I grew up in East St. Louis, Illinois, so it's now a majority Black city, and so that's what was there. That's what I saw, and to be honest, like Dr. Hayden really solidified something for me. And she was
Yes.
like, when she became the Librarian of Congress, that was right when I was getting ready to graduate from library school. And to see her hold the highest office
Yes.
in what we consider in our profession, that gave me so much hope. And it was just
Oh
like,
yes. You saw
oh,
you.
I see me now. I believe that this is possible for me to be in this
Yes.
field because she attained something that I just had never really seen. I've always had interest in, this space and interest in, and like you said, I've always loved books. I've always loved literature. I've always loved libraries, but I just didn't think that, one, I didn't know for a long time that it was even a possibility to have the degree. And so now that I have that information and stuff, I do what you said. I give back. And it's like, oh, well, this is a viable, you might want to consider this. Like
Mhm.
librarians, librarianship isn't just about reading books, loving books. It actually is about communing and dealing with people and having conversations with people. It really is people centered. That is what
Yes.
we
If
do.
you can't do the people part, you will not be successful.
Absolutely. And so I just was like, this has been a very enlightening and a very wonderful conversation. And so
I'm happy.
I'm so
It
grateful.
was for me as well.
Yes, I'm so grateful, Dr. Pam, that you took the time to have this conversation because I can't wait to go back and re-listen because I can be like, yes, 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 the replays, because you dropped so many gems, especially when it came to school librarianships, because I'll be honest, that was an area where I was a little cloudy on. And so for you
Mhm.
to come in as a school librarian and as someone
Educator of school librarians.
educator, yes, let's get that right. As an educator of school librarians, that I think that was very much so needed and necessary, because I think people need to see that there are other aspects of
Mhm.
this area. There, under this umbrella term, there are plenty of places where you can land that you can
Yes.
possibly be of use and of service. So thank you so much once again
You are so welcome. This was wonderful. Thank you so much for asking me. And hopefully the information that I've shared will be useful for you and for anyone else.
Yes, and if you have any social media handles anywhere, anybody can, where you feel like people can contact you, if they have information, if you want to share that information, you can share it now. If not, we can just,
You can connect with me on Twitter
okay,
at Pam Moore Tech. See, I started that when I was still doing technology,
okay,
but PAMMOORE Tech, TECH, Pam Moore Tech
okay.
is my Twitter, and you can connect with me there.
Okay, I'll put it at the bottom of the screen, and I'll also link it in the show notes so people can reach you there. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in for another episode of Stories with Bree, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.